The clock on the dashboard read 2:47 a.m. as Officer Marcus Chen cruised through the quiet streets of downtown. At 26, he was still considered a rookie by the veterans at the precinct, but tonight marked his 6th month on solo patrol. The city seemed to sleep around him, occasional streetlights casting long shadows across empty sidewalks. Marcus had always been observant. Even as a child, he noticed things others missed, the way his mother's smile faltered when she thought no one was looking, how his father's hands trembled slightly when he was stressed. These small details had driven him to become a police officer. He wanted to be the person who noticed when something was wrong, who could step in before it was too late. The radio crackled with distant chatter from other units. A domestic disturbance on 5th Street. A possible break-in at a convenience store. Normal night shift calls that reminded him he wasn't alone out here, even when it felt like he was the only person awake in the entire city. Marcus turned onto Maple Avenue, his patrol car's headlights cutting through the darkness. He'd driven this route dozens of times, knew every pothole, every stop sign. But tonight, something felt different. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, though the street appeared completely empty. That's when he saw it. A black SUV with heavily tinted windows emerged from a side street about 3 blocks ahead. Even from a distance, Marcus could tell the vehicle was moving too fast for a residential area. His training kicked in automatically. Observe, assess, act. The SUV was doing at least 40 in a 25 zone, and as it passed under a streetlight, Marcus noticed something else that made his stomach tighten. No license plate lights. In fact, he couldn't make out a plate at all. Marcus felt his pulse quicken as he pressed the accelerator. The SUV was now 4 blocks ahead, still speeding. He reached for his radio and flicked on his emergency lights, the red and blue strobes immediately painting the dark street in alternating colors. The siren's wail echoed off the empty buildings. The SUV's brake lights flashed, and the vehicle began to slow. But something about the way it decelerated bothered Marcus. It wasn't the sudden, almost panicked stop of someone caught speeding. Instead, the SUV pulled over gradually, deliberately, as if the driver was buying time to think. Marcus positioned his patrol car about 20 feet behind the SUV, angling it slightly to the left as he'd been taught. This positioning would protect him if another vehicle approached from behind and give him a better view of the suspect vehicle's interior. He left his emergency lights on, but killed the siren. For a moment, Marcus sat in his car, studying the SUV ahead. The windows were so dark he couldn't see inside, which immediately raised red flags. Tinted windows weren't illegal, but when they were this dark, they often meant the driver had something to hide. He reached for his radio. Dispatch. This is Unit 49. I'm conducting a traffic stop on Maple Avenue, just east of 3rd Street. Black SUV, no visible plates. Requesting backup as a precaution? The dispatcher's voice crackled back. Unit 49, backup is en route. ETA approximately 8 minutes. 8 minutes. Marcus knew that in police work, 8 minutes could feel like hours. He couldn't wait that long. If this was just a routine traffic stop, he'd look overly cautious to his colleagues. But if it was something more serious, waiting could mean losing the suspect or worse. Marcus took a deep breath, checked his weapon, and stepped out of his patrol car. The night air was cool against his skin, carrying the faint smell of rain and exhaust fumes. His footsteps echoed off the pavement as he approached the SUV, his hand resting on his holster, but not gripping it. Not yet. The driver's window remained up as Marcus approached. He could see his own reflection in the dark glass, looking younger than his 26 years under the streetlight. When he reached the window, he knocked twice with his knuckles. "Police, please lower your window." For several seconds, nothing happened. Marcus could hear his own heartbeat in his ears, feel the weight of his badge on his chest. Then, slowly, the window began to descend. But it only went down halfway, just enough for Marcus to see inside. The man behind the wheel was in his 40s, wearing a dark suit that looked expensive even in the dim light. His hair was perfectly styled, and his hands were steady on the steering wheel. Everything about him suggested wealth and confidence, but there was something in his eyes, a coldness that made Marcus's instincts scream. "Good evening, sir," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. "I pulled you over because you were exceeding the speed limit and I couldn't see your license plate lights. May I see your driver's license and registration?" The man's lips curved into what might have been a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding, officer." He paused, clearly reading Marcus's nameplate. "Officer Chen. I'm a federal agent, FBI. I'm currently on assignment." Without waiting for a response, the man reached into his jacket. Marcus tensed, his hand moving instinctively toward his weapon, but the man only pulled out a leather wallet. He flipped it open, revealing what appeared to be an FBI badge and identification card. "Special Agent David Morrison," the man said, his voice calm and authoritative. "I'm conducting surveillance on a high-priority target. I was speeding because I was trying to catch up to my subject without losing him." Marcus studied the badge. It looked authentic. The eagle, the scales of justice, the distinctive FBI lettering. But something nagged at him. Years of studying details, of noticing what others missed, had trained his eye to spot inconsistencies. The badge was upside down. It was subtle, so subtle that most people would never notice. But Marcus had spent hours studying law enforcement badges and identification during his training. He knew that FBI agents were meticulous about how they presented their credentials. No federal agent would ever display their badge upside down, especially not during an official encounter. Marcus felt his blood run cold, but he kept his expression neutral. "I understand, Agent Morrison. However, I still need to verify your identity with dispatch. Standard procedure, even for federal agents." The man's demeanor shifted almost imperceptibly. The confident smile faltered for just a moment before returning. "Officer Chen, I appreciate your diligence, but you really don't want to delay a federal operation. Time is of the essence here. I'm sure you understand, sir. Just a quick verification and you'll be on your way." As Marcus spoke, he shifted his position slightly, allowing his flashlight beam to sweep across the SUV's interior. What he saw in the passenger seat made his heart stop. A woman, probably in her 30s, sat slumped against the door. Her face was bruised, with what looked like dried blood on her lower lip. Her hands were behind her back, and Marcus could see the metallic glint of handcuffs. But it was her eyes that hit him like a punch to the gut, wide, terrified, and pleading silently for help. The woman's gaze met his for just a moment before she quickly looked away, but in that instant, Marcus saw pure terror. This wasn't a federal operation. This was a kidnapping, and he was looking at the victim. Marcus forced himself to remain calm, Though every instinct screamed at him to act immediately, he needed backup, but he also couldn't let this SUV drive away with the woman inside. "Agent Morrison," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the rage building inside him, "I'm going to need you to step out of the vehicle while I verify your credentials." The man's eyes narrowed. "I don't think you understand the situation here, son. I'm a federal agent on official business. You're interfering with a federal investigation. Then you won't mind stepping out while I confirm that with my dispatch?" Marcus slowly backed away from the window, his hand now resting on his weapon. With his free hand, he quietly keyed his radio, keeping the microphone close to his mouth to muffle his voice. "Unit 49 requesting immediate backup. Possible kidnapping in progress. Suspect is posing as federal agent. Black SUV, Maple Avenue east of 3rd Street. Victim appears to be injured female in passenger seat." The dispatcher's voice came back immediately. "Unit 49, backup is 2 minutes out. Do not engage alone." But Marcus knew 2 minutes might be too long. The man calling himself Agent Morrison was growing increasingly agitated, his calm facade cracking. Marcus could see him glancing in his rearview mirror, probably looking for an escape route. "Sir, I need you to turn off the engine and step out of the vehicle," Marcus said, his voice carrying the authority he'd learned to project despite his youth. Instead of complying, the man's hand moved toward the gear shift. "You're making a big mistake, Officer Chen. A career-ending mistake. The only mistake would be letting you drive away with that woman." The man's mask finally slipped completely. The cold smile vanished, replaced by something ugly and desperate. "You don't know what you're dealing with." "I know exactly what I'm dealing with," Marcus replied, drawing his weapon but keeping it pointed downward. "Turn off the engine, now." The SUV's engine revved loudly, and Marcus knew the man was about to run. In the passenger seat, the woman's eyes widened in terror as she realized what was happening. "Do not move that vehicle," Marcus shouted, raising his weapon. The SUV lurched forward, tires squealing against the pavement. Marcus dove to the side as the vehicle swerved toward him, missing him by inches. He rolled, came up on one knee, and immediately radioed his position. "Unit 49, suspect is fleeing eastbound on Maple Avenue. Black SUV, victim still inside, am in pursuit." Marcus sprinted back to his patrol car, his mind racing. The SUV had a head start, but Marcus knew these streets better than anyone. If he could force the vehicle toward the industrial district, there were fewer escape routes. He gunned the engine, his patrol car's powerful V8 roaring to life. The speedometer needle climbed rapidly as he pursued the SUV through the empty streets. His emergency lights painted the buildings in strobing colors, and his siren wailed through the night. Marcus keyed his radio again. "Dispatch, suspect is heading toward the industrial district, requesting units to block exits on Industrial Boulevard and Manufacturing Row. Unit 49, Units 23 and 31 are moving to intercept. Unit 17 is approaching from the north." The SUV took a hard right onto Industrial Boulevard, and Marcus felt a surge of hope. This was exactly where he'd wanted to herd the suspect. The industrial district was a maze of dead ends and warehouse complexes, with limited escape routes. Marcus gained ground on the SUV as it navigated the tighter streets. Through his windshield, he could see the vehicle ahead weaving slightly, the driver's panic finally showing in his erratic movements. Suddenly, the SUV's brake lights flashed, and it skidded to a stop. Marcus slammed on his brakes, his patrol car stopping about 30 feet behind the SUV. For a moment, everything was eerily quiet except for the sound of cooling engines. Marcus realized why the SUV had stopped. Directly ahead, blocking the street, was Unit 23, with its emergency lights flashing. Behind Marcus, he could see the lights of Unit 31 approaching. They had the suspect boxed in. Unit 49, this is Unit 23. We have the suspect vehicle contained. What's your status? Unit 23, we have a kidnapping victim in the passenger seat. Suspect is armed and dangerous, posing as federal agent. Marcus stepped out of his patrol car, his weapon drawn. Around him, he could hear car doors slamming as the other officers took positions. The SUV sat motionless between them, its engine still running. "Driver of the black SUV," Marcus called out through his patrol car's loudspeaker, "you are surrounded. Turn off the engine and exit the vehicle with your hands visible." For several tense moments, nothing happened. Then the SUV's engine died, and the driver's door slowly opened. The man who had called himself Agent Morrison stepped out, his hands raised but his face twisted with rage. "You have no idea what you've done," he snarled, as officers moved in to handcuff him. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." "I know exactly who I'm dealing with," Marcus replied, holstering his weapon as his colleagues secured the suspect. "A kidnapper and a coward." While the other officers processed the suspect, Marcus hurried to the passenger side of the SUV. The woman inside was conscious but clearly traumatized, her body shaking as Marcus gently helped her from the vehicle. "It's okay," he said softly. "You're safe now." "My name is Officer Chen. Can you tell me your name?" "Sarah," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "Sarah Mitchell. He took me from the parking garage at my apartment building. I thought he was going to kill me." Marcus carefully removed her handcuffs, noting the raw marks on her wrists. "Sarah, you're safe now. We're going to get you to a hospital, and then we'll need to talk about what happened. But right now, just know that you're safe." As the paramedics arrived and began treating Sarah's injuries, Marcus felt the adrenaline slowly leaving his system. The fake federal agent was being loaded into the back of a police car, his expensive suit wrinkled, and his confident demeanor completely shattered. Sergeant Williams, a 20-year veteran, approached Marcus as the scene was being processed. "Hell of a thing, Chen. What made you suspicious?" Marcus pulled out an evidence bag containing the fake FBI badge. The badge was upside down. No real federal agent would ever display their credentials that way. Williams whistled low. Most rookies would have just accepted the badge at face value. You saved that woman's life tonight. As the investigation continued, more details emerged. The man calling himself Agent Morrison was actually Robert Hayes, a convicted felon with a history of violence against women. Sarah Mitchell was his third victim. The first two had not been as fortunate. Later that night, back at the precinct, Marcus sat at his desk filling out paperwork. The adrenaline had completely worn off now, leaving him feeling drained but satisfied. He'd done his job, trusted his instincts, and saved a life. Detective Rodriguez stopped by his desk. "Heard you had quite a night, Chen." "Just doing my job," Marcus replied. "Not just doing your job. You could have easily accepted that badge and let him go. Most people would have. But you noticed something was off, and you acted on it." Marcus looked up from his paperwork. "My training officer always said to trust your eyes and your gut. Tonight, both were telling me something was wrong. Well, your eyes and your gut saved Sarah Mitchell's life. Hayes has been wanted in 3 states for similar crimes. You stopped a serial predator. As dawn broke over the city, Marcus finally headed home. The streets that had seemed so ominous just hours earlier now looked peaceful in the morning light. He thought about Sarah Mitchell, who was recovering in the hospital surrounded by her family. She would heal, both physically and emotionally, and she would get to see another sunrise because he had noticed an upside-down badge. Marcus realized that this was why he had become a police officer. Not for the excitement or the authority, but for moments like this, when paying attention to details, trusting his instincts, and doing the right thing made all the difference between life and death. As he pulled into his driveway, Marcus reflected on the night's events. He thought about all the small details that had led to this moment. The missing license plate lights, the too slow pullover, the cold eyes, and ultimately, the upside-down badge. Each detail had been a piece of a puzzle that, when put together, had revealed the truth. In the end, it wasn't superior firepower or advanced technology that had saved Sarah Mitchell. It was simply a young officer who had been trained to notice what others missed and had the courage to act on what he saw. Marcus smiled as he turned off his patrol car and headed inside. Tomorrow night, he would be back on the streets, watching and waiting, ready to notice the next detail that might save another life. Because sometimes the smallest observations can make the biggest difference. The badge evidence bag sat on his passenger seat, a reminder that evil often hides behind a veneer of authority and respectability. But it also reminded him that good people, trained to see the truth, can stop that evil in its tracks. As Marcus finally settled into bed as the sun rose over the city, he knew that he had found his calling. He was exactly where he was supposed to be, doing exactly what he was meant to do. And somewhere in the city, Sarah Mitchell was alive because a rookie cop had noticed that a badge was upside down. The next evening, as Marcus prepared for another shift, he received a card from Sarah Mitchell. Inside, she had written, "Thank you for seeing what others might have missed. Thank you for trusting your instincts. Thank you for saving my life." Marcus pinned the card to his locker and smiled. He checked his equipment, adjusted his badge, right side up, of course, and headed out into the night, ready to protect and serve, one small detail at a time.